Hello everybody, Jardis here, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing a Necromancer build that uses the spear weapon. Now, when Janthier Wilds recently came out, I have seen in forums on YouTube, in-game, and various other media sites that actually criticized the use of the spear on the Necromancer. A lot of people claiming that it is a very poorly developed weapon. And in my personal opinion, again, this is just my opinion, is that the spear should not be getting criticized as much as it is. Mainly because I think it is a weapon that needs to be very specific when you use it, as opposed to other builds, such as like on the Warrior, where the spear can be used for darn near any build. Well, this build is one that I've actually had for a long time. In fact, I've actually posted a build similar to this on one of my videos a while back, which I will link in the description below. And this is sort of an upgraded version of that particular build in order to include a, how should I put this, a customization in order to use the spear more effectively. Now, one thing I noticed is that after I equipped the spear onto my Necromancer, I realized that some of its abilities involve chilled and vulnerability, which actually seemed to work very well with my Ice Reaper build. So I decided I was going to implement this with a slight upgrade. Now, to show you what this build is about, first I'm going to show you what gear we will be using. We will be using Beserker stats for the armor with Superior Rune of the Scholar. Now, for the weapon itself, the spear, we will also be using Beserker stats with Superior Sigil of Chilling and Superior Sigil of Accuracy. Now, if you don't feel comfortable using the spear, you're more than welcome to use a secondary weapon set, which I have set at double swords because I have the Soto weapon mastery unlocked. If you do not have that, you can go Greatsword or excuse me, or with the staff if you prefer. For the trinkets, we will be going Beserker stats as well. And the Relic of Ice will be what we will be using for the Relic, mainly because this build focuses strictly on chilling our foes as much as possible, but it will also be dealing other forms of condition damages as well once I get into the traits, which I will now. We will be using Spite, Soul Reaping, and Reaper. We will start with the Spite, and we will be taking Bitter Chill. Chilling a foe inflicts vulnerability. Basically, we're using this to increase our overall damages that we deal to our enemies that we've chilled. We will also be taking Lesser Spinal Shivers. Chill your target and remove up to 3 boons, dealing extra damage based on the number of boons removed. And then we will cast Lesser Spinal Shivers on a foe when attacking them when their health is below the threshold. Basically, what this is that it inflicts even more conditions onto our enemies if they're at a certain health threshold, which is 50%, and we will easily get to that point once I further explain the trait lines. And then finally, we'll be taking Close to Death. Deal increased strike damage to enemies below the health threshold. Again, this complies with this one, but there's even more to it. But again, I will get into that in a moment. Excuse me. For Soul Reaping, we will be taking Unyielding Blast. Shroud 1 inflicts vulnerability. Basically, we're using this as an additional vulnerability inflictor whenever we have to enter Shroud. We will be taking Soul Barbs. Entering or exiting Shroud increases all damage you deal for a duration. Now, we will on occasion be going in and out of Shroud on occasion, so we do need something in order to complement our damage output for that. And then finally, we will be taking Death Perception. Gain increased critical strike chance. Gain increased critical strike chance damage while in Shroud. Basically, this just increases our overall critical damage in general, but we get an even more buff while we're in Shroud, which complements the Soul Barbs. And then finally, with the Reaper, we will be taking Chilling Nova. Critical hits against chilled foes cause an explosion that chills adjacent foes. Basically, like I said earlier, that we want to be chilling our foes as much as possible. Well, this just gives us an even additional chilling effect. We will be taking Soul Eater. Striking foes within the range threshold deals increased strike damages and heals you for a portion of the damage dealt. This is basically a survival trait, but it also gives us a benefit for pulling all our enemies towards us, which again I will get into in a moment. And then finally, the must-have for this build, Deathly Chill. Chill deals damages over time. Basically what this is that every time we inflict chill on our enemy, and as you've noticed we will be doing that a lot, it will also inflict bleeding upon them as well as vulnerability. Now, in order to pull our enemies to us, we will be taking a look at the utilities. First off, we'll be taking a look at the Signet of Vampirism. Basically, we're using this for the passive effect to steal health from nearby enemies while we're in combat. We will be taking Well of Darkness. Basically, this is another chill effect, but this one can be done at ranged. We will be taking Suffer. Damage foes around you and chill them. Basically, again, another chilling effect, but this one's more of a close range AoE effect. And Spectral Grasp. Pull enemies to you. Chill them and gain life force. This is our starting attack that we will be using whenever we get into combat. Normally, in most of my builds, if you've been following my channel, I do not normally set a rotation for my builds, mainly because I want it to be free as possible for the player to make up their own interpretation on how they play this build, or that build, excuse me. But this one, it does specifically require that we use Spectral Grasp almost as soon as we get into a combat, mainly because we want to pull our enemies towards us. And then once we do that, we hit them with Chill to the Bone. Freeze all enemies around you, inflicting conditions on them, gain boons for each foe you freeze, and deal additional damage and increase stun duration and gain additional boons when striking foes within melee range. Now, the reason why we want this melee range, other than the fact that it improves our Soul Eater, is because the spear weapon actually has an attack, Spear 5, Exasperate, which performs a wide swing that removes boons from foes and negates the next few boons applied to them. Gains soul shards and might for each target struck. Once we have enemies within melee range and we hit them with this, we gain our soul shards, which becomes a... I don't exactly know how to describe it, but I can guess we can call it a weapons buff, where it gives us an item that increases the attacks on the weapon that we're using. Primarily, the one that we want to increase is the Proliferate, which attacks foes in front of us with a series of strikes, consuming any active soul shards, dealing additional damage against foes against the health threshold. And once those soul shards are used, they siphon health from targets struck by this attack. So, basically what we're doing is we're pulling our enemies towards us, we're chilling them so that they can't move anywhere, and they take a lot of condition damage. We will be striking them to gain soul shards, and then we will be using those soul shards to increase our health, is essentially what we will be using. Now, to show you how this build works, I am currently in Verdant Brink, which is part of the Heart of Thorns expansion, in the Creeping Crevasse area, which is west of the Shipwreck Peak waypoint. Now we're going to go down to this waypoint down here. We're going to trigger it. And we're going to come over here, and we are going to do exactly that. And as you can see, I've been chilling them a lot. And once we've used up our chill effects, we go into Shroud and we devastate them. And as you can see, he's up to 25 vulnerability and 4 bleeding as well. And once our Shroud wears off, we hit him with Suffer, hit him again with the Soul Shards, and bada bing, bada boom. And we are apparently missing somebody. There you are. Come here. And that is how you play this build. I hope you enjoy. Feel free to share this information with anybody else who's interested in a Spear Reaper. And I will, I will emphasize once again that this is not the greatest build that you can make for a Necromancer, but it is one that I and several others have thoroughly enjoyed. So, again, share this information with anybody else who's interested, and I will see you again in the next video. Until then, happy gaming!